Hello, and welcome to the show today. Thank you for joining us. My name is Pamela Miles, and I'll be host today. And I'm a life midwife and also a beauty guide with Lyme Life by Alcone. I'm super excited that you're here with us today to meet an amazing woman. But first, I want to tell you my intention for the show. As always, my intention is to bring you inspiring topics and resources and people to encourage you to find your passion and your purpose within yourself. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to my guest, Jennifer Daure. She's an executive coach, a speaker, and also a host herself. So welcome to the show, Jennifer.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Pamela.
You are very welcome. I was so impressed with some of the things that I found out about you after we met, and I felt a tingling of like, oh, this woman has some really special gifts to share, and I think they'd be perfect for this audience. One of the things that I was really curious about, and maybe you could tell us a little bit more background, how did you yourself get into the career of being an executive coach?
Wow. It's funny because, that story evolved throughout the years. It's been 10 years that I've been coaching. But the core of the story is, I used to work in the fashion industry. So I worked in the fashion industry for 10 years and I wasn't really happy. I had, a great house, a great career. I was successful and everything, but it was really something missing. And, part of me is also a performer. So I used to do a lot of contests of singing and dancing and doing all sorts of things. And through that, I met a life coach for the first time. And I was like, what the hell does that do? And, in my mind, I said, I want what this guy has. And today, fast forward to today, I worked with him for a couple of years and he's still one of my really great mentors today. And he really inspired me to live the life I really wanted to live. So when I started coaching everyone about everything. After that, I found a great, amazing professional coach training program. And, it's how you start, right? Like when you start in this career, you want to coach everyone about everything. And I had a lot of time coaching with women, and I used to organize group in my own community in Hoboken. And it was kind of like my playground to practice. And then through that, I really narrowed down my niche to working mostly with women. And that was really cool. And then at some point, I'm like, well, I want to bring my career to another level. And so I was curious about the corporate world. And, that's how I decided. I just basically chose to go into corporate. I chose to become an executive coach because in essence, when you're trained to be a coach, the title of life executive or all these other ones are simply a focus of the clientele you're working with. It's not meaning anything that I have more than anyone else.
That's kind of going to lead me to the next question, which is, so I understand that you work with mostly women, but you're in corporate. So obviously you touch on many different people's lives through coaching the leaders in the company. What's the difference between coaching someone in leadership for their corporation and leadership for themselves, leadership of themselves? What's the difference? Is there a difference?
Well, this is such an excellent question, Pamela, and I still ask myself that. And for being in corporation and for coaching other people outside of corporation on leadership, there is some sort of a distinction, because when you go into a corporation and say, we're going to do leadership development, it's very focused on soft skills development. How to communicate, how to lead my team, motivate my team, how to listen better, how to inspire, empower, and how to create, more performance and things. And then when you coach someone in their leadership on a one-on-one, it's more like, how do you become, I like to say, how do you become the leader of yourself? How do you listen to your inner voice? How do you listen to your inner authority? So in essence, they combine, they're the same. It's just the language that you use. In corporation, I'm not going to start with them and say, hey, we're going to talk about, what do your inner self say about yourself? We do get into those conversations, but the way to go about it is very different than when you're doing what I say pure, coaching on one-on-one on how to be the leader of yourself, basically.
Yeah, I was kind of curious about that because I felt like the words could be. I read some things on your website and I felt like, oh, a lot of this really is about self-mastery.
It is.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really, how can you be a good leader unless you are a good listener? And in order to be a good listener, don't you have to somewhat, kind of tame your mind a little bit to be open to hear what other people have to say, right?
Yeah. Well, it all comes down to that, like and the way to go about it, it's just a different entry point. When I coach executive or managers or VP, for instance, it's all about how do you know how other people perceive you? So it all becomes other people are their mirror. Everything that happens in their organization is the mirror of who they're being with them and around them and how they're leading them. So it's the same thing in your personal life. Like everything that happens around us is how you're being around these people. So how do you, from what place within you do you lead? Is it from a place of care, of love, or I'm going to just tell you what to do? Are you looking to always control the outcome that's happening around you? So there's so many things. Like leadership is such a big word too. So it's a big, big topic, and it's a mouthful to chew.
It is. And I noticed you do break it down into 8 sort of areas. You call them the 8 dimensions of influence.
Yes.
And so I was really curious because to me, all of these that you mentioned, self-awareness, values, confidence, community, leadership, fashion, body language, communication style, I think I got them all. All of them are personal decisions that a person would make. And also they could, be taken to their leadership style. So how did you come up with those 8 areas? What was your thought process on that?
Well, my thought process on that, I'm a very curious person. So it's not surprise, my husband a few years ago started calling me a brain surgeon without a scalpel. Because I always want to know why people do what they do. So I'm always curious about what other coaches are doing, what other approaches exist, the distinction between consulting and coaching and therapy and why all these things. So after doing this for about 10 years and after trying a few different things on myself and with others, I decided it was time to create my own program based on all the experience that I've accumulated and what I've seen is missing and needed within corporation and in leadership and businesses as well. So that's kind of how I came up with it. And the fashion component, obviously, since I've worked 10 years in the fashion industry, for me, I had to add it in there because it's part of also how you present yourself. It's all together, right? It's such a great, like for me, these area when I was creating them are 8 areas you can influence directly that will impact your leadership style. So it's almost like these 8 elements you have control over. And as humans, we like to have control over things.
Yeah, there was another thing that I read that you wrote about self-expression is a tool to discovery to unleash the power of your full potential.
Yes.
And I think that's sort of a little bit what you're touching on, but can you tell me more about that? So do you think that there is such a thing as like, getting to a place where you really feel like you're in that zone and you're really, really grooving on that full potential and you're really feeling like you're really purposeful and you're feeling satisfied and you're feeling content inside yourself and you're feeling, that what you're doing matters.
Yeah. Well, I think people are different. And I think the level of feeling that varies throughout the years. Because we're not the same person we were a year, 2 years, 10 years ago. And we're not the same person we're going to be a year, 2 years, 10 years from now. So at some point during your life, you will feel that way. And then you will feel so much in that way in your self-expression because you feel all of your, skills and talents are all in one place and you feel very powerful. And then, what the mind does is we get comfortable with it and then it becomes a new way of being. And then there's going to be new blind spots showing up. And then you're going to be like, wait a minute, there's something that I've missed here. So somehow life, wherever you are, whether at work, at home, will bring you back to, okay, I need to redefine something. And that's one of the reasons why I called it redefine your leadership style, because we're always reinventing or else we don't grow. Or else we're always, stagnant and the same. But life doesn't work that way. If we want to have the ability to adapt throughout times, we have to be able to, yes, express ourselves and find that purposeful time so we can move forward without, going crazy about all these sorts of things. But, it's a flow. It goes in stages.
Absolutely. And especially when I think about some of the ways in which, especially in corporations, it can work. Let's say you're really good at sales, and then all of a sudden they say, "Oh, you're so good at sales, we want you to be a manager now." And it's a
Right.
totally different
Oh
skill
my God.
set.
Totally. And we see that all the time. And it's fascinating to me because we know it and we still do it. We're still in a mentality where we were working, that our skills were very technical. And it's great because it's very important to have the technical skills and the knowledge. It's never something to diminish. However, when you go into those higher positions, it's not because you're good at making something with your hands and with your knowledge and with, everything that you know before, that you're great at leading people. Leading people is like herding cats. And to lead people, it's beyond telling them what to do is not really going to cut it. Like, you wish it would be that way. You wish it would just say, do what I say or something. It just doesn't work that way.
Sounds a lot like parenting.
Yeah. And it's funny you say that because sometimes with Pleo I coach, that's the conversation we have. It's like, well, sometimes, it's a little bit like parenting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what do you think? Do you think there really is a difference between the female style and maybe the male style, or is there a difference in the gender, the leadership styles, or?
Well, it's such a loaded question, right? And there's a lot of opinions about it. From what I'm seeing in corporate specifically, whenever I coach executives and leaders and managers, there's always about a woman or two out of 10 men. So in terms of number, they're already lower. So what I'm seeing as a difference, if we're going in the gender differences, is that, women don't feel heard as much. They feel that, their ideas are being stolen at the table, or they have to work harder. Or when they actually are successful, they're seeing as the B, I'm a bitch, right? Like, they're seeing as somebody that's like, I'm going to be that person, when they're just, looking to lead in a different way and be understood and stuff. The difference too is that what I'm seeing is that a lot of time women are looking to adopt male strengths, right? Like more directive and everything, instead of being and tapping into their feminine. And I know we've done a program together, Pamela. So now it's not about, is it difference between male and female? It's more between like, what are the masculine and feminine typical trait that people are using, right? Because there's a spectrum between all of them. So I guess the short answer, yes, I see a difference. As a matter of fact, I had a sub brand that I used to call Women in the Boys Club, because we feel like we're always the only ones in the boys club, especially in those higher positions, which is a shame because a lot of women are talented and are not getting higher, or they're not getting promoted. So it's either, so it is different styles. It's different styles, but it's on a spectrum.
Do you think that because of the fact that there may be, let's say, for instance, I had an experience in corporate environment where I was often the only woman at the table.
Mm-hmm.
And, so I wasn't seeing, other women around me in that role of power.
Yeah.
Do you think that makes a difference? And think that when we see more women in politics, in roles of leadership in our politics, in our corporations, in entrepreneur endeavors, do you think it will make a difference and things will be different in the way that maybe, we do share our leadership styles?
Absolutely. I mean, what we see share our world, and there's something about belonging and having role models, and it's hard for women to find these role models. Like, it makes me happy to see even more out there that are being more outspoken and creating things and asking for things. As women, we don't ask for things. We have to ask for things. We have to be, we have to build that muscle and, and build that confidence and show other women that it is possible to get there, right? So it's more than, I find as women, it will make a difference. And especially by being the example, is just inspiring other younger women to do the same thing. I don't know, like, who were your heroes when you were a kid? Like, there was not a lot of female heroes when you really think about it. I like, a lot of guys, and still some of my mentors today are guys, and I love men, nothing removing to that. I think men and women can mentor each other, beyond anything, but more women needs to be out there and be brave and embrace their feminine and not think that they have to have those male characteristics to make it.
That's so great. Is there a story that you can share with us of a client, maybe a success in sharing a resource or a suggestion about building confidence or about how to hold yourself in a situation? Do you have any client stories that you would feel comfortable to share? Any form of success, just to give us a little bit of an image of an idea of like, if we had a mentor, what we would see if we had a model.
Yeah. Well, the woman that comes to my mind, it's great because she was the only woman in her team, and it was, manufacturer, but she was really driven. She was really a joy to coach. I love, when people are hungry and want more and everything. And, me going in, being there around men, and I'm not, when you picture sometimes, because yes, sometimes I work with executive in corporation, and I put my clothes, dress and everything, and my little heels. And when I go to manufacturer, I have to put steel-toed shoes when those opportunities arise, because being on site makes a difference to see how they're being in the environment. Mm. So seeing, a little young girl like me, I'm not that, but you know what I mean, like a girl in the guy's environment, all in my things, and having this woman, like for her it already shifted her being, and to have me support her in building that confidence, and to realize how simply asking and voicing what she wanted to her own manager, because I coach, managers also. So, for her it was huge. And at the end, she got promoted because she did the work and she realized it didn't have to be that hard. And she saw, at the same time, I still work on myself. And at the same time, when I coach people, I also look to model what I'm teaching. I'm not perfect at it. I'm still working on a lot of things, but I also model what I teach, because if I'm saying that you have to be, a certain way in a certain environment, or that you watch yourself, how you're being around your environment, that will make a difference. And there's another example. It's not a success story, but it's also like a context of how, the difference between men and women and the difference that it makes, and how modeling a behavior is also important when we coach or teach things, right? So we were walking through, a factory, and we were 4 people. So there was 4 managers, and one of them was the HR manager, and she was a female. So she was like, she was small, she was a female, and the 2 other managers were like 6 foot something, so tall men. But it's important, the picture, because there's 2 tall men, and then there's me, and then the shorter women, and I was walking next to them, right? And we were talking about things, and the woman, the HR, was doing her HR thing. Me, when I say that, it means like, it's a people's people. So she was like saying hi to everyone, and this is the nice thing to do. However, at the end of the tour that we did, I set her to the side. I said, did you notice how you were being around those men? She was like, shy and being able to like talk to them. And yes, she was doing other things, but her being was very different around those men. I said, your voice needs to be heard. You need to be walking next to them at the same time. This will make a difference. Just those little things. It's not even what you're saying. It's how you're being and how you're, standing next to other people as well. And she was like, oh my God. So it all changed her perspective.
You've mentioned that word a few times. And I wanted to say, I don't know if I've ever noticed anyone use the word being as much around the topic of coaching and leadership. And I absolutely love it. Do you have any particular rituals or practices that you personally use or that you teach your clients about the concept? I mean, I think that, in some ways, not everybody really would understand what that word being.
No. And it's funny. I'm actually saying it, that you've noticed it. And there's actually a joke with my husband, like, so, oh, now we're going to be being, right? but the background is that my professional training and coaching is ontological coaching. So we talk about the core of who we are as a human being. So we talk about the distinction between doing versus being, right? So there's a difference when we're doing something, doing action versus who am I being? Am I being, empathetic? Am I being a leader? Am I listening from a place of judgment, of control? Or, there's all these things that encompasses who we're being. So my own ritual is really my own tool. I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed with how people think, the way they think, and why they do what they do. And I do the same thing on myself. Now I tone it down because, you know, as a friend sometimes, or as, you know, my husband or family, like, they don't want to be coached all the time. It's not that I coach them, but it's a natural thing. It's like, but why are you doing it like that? Like, I'm just curious about everything. But that's how I am with myself. I questioning, not in the sense that I'm not confident about it, but I question everything that I do. And especially when something triggers me. And that's what I teach people to do for themselves, because every trigger that we have is an indicator of something we need to resolve in ourselves, right? Because also part of my training is learning to be with different things. And the being is like your being with things expand with the more things you can live around with. And it's not about tolerating. It's not about accepting or validating other people's behavior. It's more allowing them to be in that space and explore, okay, who am I? Like, what am I doing? And how what I'm doing is impacting my environment. So yeah.
Wow. You know,
Yeah.
it sounds like if you were to bring some of these concepts to younger, you know, to people at a younger age, it would have such an influence on their lives, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, these are things that needs to be thought, you know, empathy and critical thinking and all these sort of thing, and not taking anything as the true. And you're right, like the young population needs that so much. Part of why I choose to work with adult population is that, you know, one of my goals is to create and help creating the next generation, the influence, the people who will influence the next generation. And that's the thing I love. I like kids, but I prefer working with adults because there's so much there. And it's fun to unravel, because the phase that they have when they discover something about themselves they never knew before, or something that they knew and realize they can actually do something about it. It's awesome. It's like, wow, I had no idea I was doing that.
Yeah, I bet you also would possibly meet up with some really strong challenges, like some really like, I don't want to go there, I don't want to look at that type
Yes.
of attitude. Do you have any particular tips or tools, you know, for those people out there that maybe are in leadership roles and they're hearing this conversation and they're like, wow, this is really confronting to me. You know,
Yeah.
do you have any suggestions or resources for them to look further into what that might be? You know, like you say, the triggers.
Yeah. Well, you know, everybody has a different learning style. So, you know, I say coaching is for everyone. Also say coaching is not welcome from everyone, because yes, it is confronting, because you only get to look at yourself. So, you know, for them, it depends what they want to create, because if you don't self-reflect, if you don't do the work, you don't grow. You just don't. Yeah, you can read a book, of course. And, you know, I work with a lot of smart people. And one of the first thing I tell them when I'm in the room with them is like, I'm not the expert at your job at all. Like, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm only here to make you better than you already are. Because all the knowledge that you have, there are things in there that you know, but you're not applying well, or you forgot about, or, you know, what's the quality of what you know is, how's the quality of what you know applied in your day to day, right? And what made it that you let it go, right? So there's so much, there's so much. So these people, it's about being real about, what do I want to grow out of, or who do I want to grow into? Or another thing I can tell people, especially when they're a little more like, well, how do you want to leave your organization? When you leave from that place, what do you want people to say about you? Do you want to be forgotten? Do you want to be, oh, he wasn't blah, blah, blah. She wasn't nee, nee, nee. I mean, it's okay. Like, it's not about, not everybody's going to love, because leadership is not all about being liked, but like, what does your legacy wants to look like? And you can think about that even as a young manager and leader, because every day you're building your brand, you're building your own leadership style.
Yeah, I know that a lot of people have referred to people like Steve Jobs, for instance, and said that, you know, he wasn't necessarily at the time he was in leadership, you know, really like, wow, what a great guy, you know.
Right.
But the lasting impression is, wow, look at what he was able to do and move through and bring so many people further because of the way he was, because of the way he thought.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have other examples of people like that you can think of that are like, yeah, maybe, or even people like, I think about even people like Eleanor Roosevelt. I just love her. To me, she was a leader.
Yeah.
And she exemplified a lot of the tools and the techniques and the things that you bring up: empathy, compassion, listening. I think she had an incredible, really lived an example of an incredible life of listening to people. And
oh, absolutely. And not everybody was liking it either. Yeah.
Oh yeah, because there was an impression of what you should be in that role.
Yes.
And then how she was a self-expressed person, right?
Absolutely.
Like she didn't allow the role that she was married into, because of being the wife of the president. She, created her own definition of that, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, you can go into, I remember when I was training as a coach, one of my mentor, and I was struggling with, being liked. That was one of my go-to. It's still part of me. I know when it's showing up and when it's guiding my actions, like, okay, maybe that's really not helping now, because I'm more interested in being liked than actually doing, something that is unpopular. Right. So, and she knew I wanted to have, my own TV show someday. And one of the things she said, because they used to call me the Canadian Oprah. So I like to say that because I thought it was really cute. And she used to tell me, it's like, Oprah is not nice, Jennifer. And that always stayed with me, because it shifted my perception of like, okay, like to really make it as a businesswoman or as a leader, however we want to call it, of having your own empire of doing things. It's not about being nice. It's about inspiring, leading, about, being directive and confident and all these sort of things. So the nice part, of course, you have to be kind and nice, but it's not just that. Like Oprah, I'm sure she's not in her background like, oh, okay, it's going to be okay if I'm not, doing this for you today. Like, this is not how you run a business, right?
That in itself is a whole nother conversation.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a really good one. And I'd love to continue the conversation with you about this sometime, but we do have to wrap it up.
I know.
So I wanted to give you some time to be able to share with people how to get a hold of you in case they want to, learn more about what you're saying about it's not about being nice.
Yes.
Well, I would love to hear the rest of that conversation. So if people do want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for someone to reach out to you if they want to follow up with you and, find out more about what you do or find out more about your perspective?
Well, there's 3 ways to reach out to me. The best way is either call or text. So call or text at 267-421-7534. Or you can email me at jendaure@gmail.com. And if you really want to connect more and see also all the sorts of resources, I'm very active on LinkedIn. So if you want to ping me on LinkedIn, that's a really great way. I have a website too, but LinkedIn is really a good way to connect with me and have quick interaction and learning at the same time and that sort of thing.
Thank you so much for your time today, Jennifer.
Thank you, Pam. It was so nice to meet you.
Thank you all for tuning in and watching, and please stay tuned for more great shows that we're going to be bringing to you.